turnout. I'm so happy to see you all. Who's excited to talk about artist statements today?
Yay!
Yay. Hi, Amanda.
Hi.
How's it going?
Thanks for the invite to come and participate and to do this today. It's a good thing to get into this.
Yeah, I didn't realize how important it was until one, I posted in the Nonstop group and I said, what classes do you guys want to see again? And the number one request was for artist statements. So it seems like a lot of people in our community are working on this. And then in my own research, as I started to look for solid artist statements, I was really taken back by how in general this seems to be a thing amongst artists in many different types of art. Like I really went outside of the box and I found some winners, but definitely some encouragement for us to come together to talk about it, to get our artist statements in the works or revised back on the table, and to see how we can pave the way for others that also need good artist statements.
Yeah, I felt too with doing a little bit of research. I didn't go too deep, but just refreshing, and looking around a little bit. I find, it's really three things. There's the artist statement, there's the CV, and then there's the biography, right? And everybody kind of like highlights it different and or puts attention on it differently. So they're quite different things, and different people are, have a different style too. Like everybody has a different style of what they're what they're going to focus on how they present themselves. And to some it's important to have a statement, to some it's not as much. I can tell even like really well-known artists, they don't have that, just a CV, like Shepard Fairey, he just has a CV, there's nothing else. And it's like, where was he born, like where he was born, and that's it for biography. And so it's different for everyone. So yeah, I'm curious to hear, Ania, like what you've discovered, and maybe you lead the way. And
For sure. I mean, I came to this subject because I felt that my own just description of my art and about me page on my website was lacking. And I know how important it is to be able to give someone a glimpse at my process and my art and what I'm doing in the shortest amount of time. And I've found in my research that there's, like you said, a variety of different types of artist statements. And I think my goal today is to guide us in deciding, like having a bunch of different versions of this story, right? We're going to talk about how to deliver that story, what's that story that we're telling, and knowing that there's going to be a different story for different scenarios. My artist statement when I'm applying to a specific grant or a project may be different than the general artist statement on my website. So we're having to make statements about our art all the time for different things. And I think it's really important that we practice being able to articulate that story, and then also having different versions that we can manipulate depending on what our end goal is. Just have that in the bank ready to go. I know I've sat down to apply for different things and think that I can just come up with it on the fly. And it's really something that takes time to think about and to articulate in a way that conveys our message clearly, just like in our art. And sometimes you only get that one chance, right? We only get that 3 minutes to have someone stop and read that statement. And we just want to be clear in our delivery and in the content. So let me just give you an overall idea of the flow for today. I wanted to read a blog. I found a really awesome blog that I think articulates what we're talking about really well and that will give us some good information. And then just touch quickly on the differences between the artist statements, the bio and the CV, and then really just share artist statements, because I think that's the best way for us to learn, is to see what other people are doing that resonates with us and be able to formulate our own statement. How many people, just show of hands, have a short artist statement, like one paragraph that defines the who, what, and at least the how of your art. How many people are going to be working on one today? Maybe throughout, we've got a jam session halfway through, and I'd like to invite you all to use this time while we're here. Let's get it done. Okay, some of you guys, awesome. How many people are applying to an exhibition soon or want to submit their work somewhere online that's going to require an artist statement? All right, some of you guys.
We actually, with the Transformation 2020, which is one of the things that spurred doing this, we're actually not asking for an artist statement in this exhibition. We're asking for just a statement about the painting. So,
which is, I think, the same rules are going to apply when you're drafting that art, a statement about your painting or a statement about yourself or a specific project. You know, it could, I really think it can apply to all of them.
I just wanted to clarify that because that was something that we originally did ask for the Mushroom Magic exhibition. And then we found with the format of the virtual exhibition, we couldn't fit everything.
Yeah.
So then we chose with the statement about the specific work. But then of course there's a link from that exhibition that could, you know, everybody could submit a link to then for people to go deeper into the work to find the artist, to contact the artist. And that's where then they would, if on the website, on your own personal like art website, you would find the about or some, you know, would be where you would find the artist statement and where you would find, you know, biography. And that's just for somebody that's like interested. What's this person's story? What are they really about? And the statement then is more general around the overall intention and vision that you have for your work. And then a specific painting that should, it needs to be harmonious, maybe even with the cadence of how it's written potentially, right? I don't know. That's what I would suggest. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to pull up this blog and give it a read the highlights. This is by a artist and writer, Sarah Hotchkiss. And she says, I like to think of the artist statement as a wedding toast of the art world. If you wing it, suddenly you're on the spot in front of a crowd of expectant faces, trying to put into words a relationship between you and your art that you've always felt intuitively. We've all seen those toasts. They don't go well. But if you put the time and energy into crafting your message beforehand, you'll actually add to the crowd's understanding of the significance of this event, your art, and help them feel all the more feels more deeply. I've been wrestling with my own artist statement for as long as I've been making art, and I must confess, it's never a task I look upon with glee. This, despite the fact that I write about art for a living. But reading other people's statements has taught me a lot about what works and what doesn't, and how to reverse engineer a killer toast. A clear, concise, compelling artist statement. I'm going to also post this blog for you guys in the chat. This meeting is being recorded, so you'll be able to go back and listen to these notes as well if you're just following along. So first things first, what is an artist statement? An artist statement is a not too long series of sentences that describe what you make and why you make it. It's a stand-in for you, the artist, talking to someone about your work in a way that adds to their experience of viewing that work. Here are a few things artist statement is not. A manifesto, an art history lecture, a story about discovering art, short fiction, psycho self-analysis, a string of adjectives, a grand theory of everything you've ever made, or a list of your career accomplishments. You'll be called upon to submit artist statements when you apply for residencies, grants, and sometimes exhibition opportunities. I wrote my first substantial one when I applied to MFA programs. And here's the secret. Even though they can be hard to write, they're immensely useful. It truly helps me understand my own practice to sit down every few months and translate this nonverbal, solitary thing that I spend countless hours on into words for a specific audience. If you're reading this guide and it's not the night before an important application is due, then you're in good shape. Artist statements take time, but they don't have to be torture. If you can get into the habit of stepping back, evaluating your work, and writing a few sentences about it, you won't have to start from scratch when you're down to the wire, which is definitely why we're here today. So she goes into the basic brainstorming phase, and that's something I want to touch on quickly, that this doesn't have to be a stressful task, right? In the next few minutes, we're not going to just magically come up with a few sentences that fully encompass our artistic endeavors, you know, maybe, but chances are that that's a process. And some brainstorming ideas that she provides are to do like a mind dump, just grab a document or a piece of paper and make a list of adjectives that describe your art. Just get all the words out. Maybe you start with that full length story and you just start from the beginning and let it all flow. And then you're cutting down these different versions. But just getting some thoughts down, that's a first starting place. And that could be as simple as a list, you know, just describing your art. You can also gather your art in one digital or physical space and really look at it, you know, going back through your website or just the overall body of work and pulling out those things that are noteworthy, right? I like to call it the who, what, and how. You know, you're not always going to have time in this artist statement to go into every detail about the where or the background. You're going to save those details for your bio. And even then, you're just wanting to include what is most relevant to me as an artist and to this person that's going to get to know me through this statement. You could record yourself describing your art to a friend, family member, or fellow artist. Chances are you're making statements about your work all the time. Have a studio visit coming up, maybe record a conversation with the other person, transcribe the audio, and mine it for pertinent details. I mean, even if you're not talking to someone else and you don't feel like writing, just record yourself. Practice talking about your work in a way that's going to help you to articulate that story. Think about the emotions and reactions you want your audience to come up with. An artist's intent may have little bearing on an audience's interpretation, but an artist statement is one of the few places you get to nudge that audience towards your desired result. Do they learn something from your art or make new connections between disparate subjects? Are you trying to make people feel agitated, joyful, incensed? So again, you're thinking about that connection that people are having with your art and what your intention is there and just verbalizing that. Some artist statement basics. Suddenly you have a bunch of words describing your art. Now you get to pick the best ones to fulfill the very basic elements of an artist statement. What, why, and possibly how. What? Make sure to state what medium you work with in painting, sculptures, installations, non-narrative video, durational performances. It's amazing how many statements don't include that basic fact. Why? Try not to overthink this one. Look back to your brainstorms and your casual conversations. You make this work because you're excited about it. What exactly are you excited about? Be confident. Your art shouldn't be hope or try to do something to the viewer. It should just do it. Here's where you can also bring up, without going too far into the art historical weeds, your influences and inspirations. And the how. If you have a truly unique process that's important to understand, or one that images cannot accurately convey, briefly describe how you make your work. Please note, collage is not a unique practice, and there's no inventive way to describe it as much, even if you use the word juxtapose. By fulfilling these basic what, why, and how requirements, an artist statement can be relayed in whatever tone, sentence structure feels best to you. I encourage you to use full sentences as fragments and flighty. That's it, really. So again, the core of that artist statement being your what, why, and how. And there's just a little bit more of this blog I want to share that I think is really noteworthy here. And that's some red flags, bad practices, and other traps to avoid. In many years of reading artist statements and gallery press releases, I've developed an ever-growing list of banned words and phrases. While these ways of writing may sound fancy, they're actually empty, and using them to make a piece of writing look lazy and nonspecific. Artist statements are particularly susceptible to these traps because we write what we think people want to hear instead of what's actually true to our work. Your artist statement should feel like it's written by you, the artist, not a critical theorist or an art history professor or a dealer or a curator. The people reading it are looking for an enriched experience of your work and proof that you've put some thought into what you're making. They want to hear your voice, not that of some formulaic art jargon robot. So some things to avoid. Extreme binaries. Is your work really examining the strangeness of both interior and exterior spaces? Is it both casual and formal, light and dark? Similarly, ask yourself, is your work truly blurring the boundaries between text and subtext? You want to avoid lazy cliches. Only make your art, only you make your artwork. So you shouldn't use so shouldn't the words you use to describe it be unique and specific as well? If you find yourself using certain words as crutches or high flatulent stand-ins for hard to articulate ideas, I highly recommend creating your own banned words list and keeping it somewhere handy. Then go back to your brainstorm notes and pick out words or phrases that feel concise, fresh, and truly related to your work. All right, another one is false range. I think this is important. I actually found myself doing this in my own artist statement when I read this. So maybe this will speak to you. Does your practice range from drawing to sculpture to video to artist books, or do you simply make drawings, sculptures, videos, and artist books? False range is a rampant and completely accepted form of writing these days, but the discerning reader will notice it and judge you for it. If false range creates a continuum between one thing and another when there is no actual continuum. Yes, your palette can range from blues to reds, color is a spectrum, but your influences cannot include everything from Wanda Sykes stand up to Tamagotchi pets and tinsel. There's no middle point between Tamagotchi and tinsel. That's an important one for me. I had listed, you know, I do everything from murals to custom canvases, and I actually do canvases and murals, like she said. Let me just get to the important stuff. So now that once we have a draft, here's some ways she suggests us to close out. We're going to read the statements out loud. Look at your art while you reread it. Remember that the artist statement should be current. You don't need to sum up a wide-ranging practice from the beginning of your baby artist days to the present moment. It should reflect whatever images you're providing alongside it. Put it another way, your artist statement shouldn't be so aspirational that you talk about making room-size installations while your images are a few small-scale watercolors. It's a really good point, really good point. Shorter is better. This is probably the main point for the artist statement. Being economical with words, oh, getting a call. 1 second. Shut my door. Okay. So the point about it being short, it goes back to like how much time we're going to actually have with the people that are reading our artist statements. Sometimes that may be 30 seconds. It could be a minute. And we want to be able to make our point as clearly and quickly as possible. And you have other opportunities to tell your life story, right? There's going to be that bio. I really think it's important, as I was saying, to have all these different versions, because some people do want to know every detail about your process and where you've started. But I think for like this overall general statement about who we are and what we're making and why, being able to get to the point as quickly as possible and also paint that picture as clearly with our word choice is really important. So let me get that article link. And get it posted for you guys. She's awesome.
So many good points there, Anya. I find it's also something that, you know, it evolves. You know, your artist statement is going to evolve through time, and it's something to revisit, like ideally probably every year, you know. Absolutely. And like having a variety of things that are, I think a variety of statements. The really short and concise and the longer one. I mean, this is really helpful. You start to build up a library of these like different versions that are then super helpful for different situations, you know, in interviews, a variety of things. Looking at mine's way out of date. I feel like I need to update it. Like
Amanda, you were actually one of, I did another trip on this, one of the first statements that I read, because even though it might be older, it still falls within the guidelines that we're discussing now. I actually wanted to know if you wanted to read each other's statements at some point. I think it's important for you to have somebody else read your statement because you see how it's read to you. You know,
That'd be fun.
yeah. Okay, cool. I'll shoot you over the link in a minute. Was there anything specific that stood out? I know reading to you is kind of weird, but I just love this article so much. And I know some of you are painting and working, so I wanted you to hear those words. And she has a lot of other good points that I didn't go into. It's a pretty thorough article, so definitely touch on that. It's easy to get lost in the words sometimes, and some of those points that she brought up about like the false ranges and just being, you know, mindful of that, of how we're describing our work. And, you know, I think it's really important.
I think really, really valuable is like what's real, like what, like, and that's the false, what'd you call it? False ranges.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. So to be honest, and then to really, it's like an opportunity to give somebody another way to understand what you're doing and your work. And it helps you actually, in many ways, understand a little bit more of what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know, to refine it in that. Like, that's what it's been for me. It's like, okay, so what am I actually really interested in? And what is actually really going into, what's like the big story here of what I'm aiming to do, you know? And then you want to write your statement while you're also looking at your work.
Mm-hmm.
Very, I think, really important, because it's like, is this true? Is this real? You know, because it's like, and then simplify,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Definitely.
I found, I think over time, there's some things in the statement that's on my website that I have taken pieces, or maybe not, maybe it's in a different one, from other writings in kind of reflecting. And maybe maybe you don't want to copy and paste exactly, right? But there's other writers and other people can also see something in you, in your work, that can help you see your own work. Because I mean, it's hard as the creator, it's sometimes a little challenging to actually see really what you're doing. But this is in your own words. What are you, you know, that's what the artist statement is. So,
right.
yeah.
And if there's resistance and like, oh, I've got to write this official artist statement, and when I sit down to do that, I draw a blank. But when I'm just talking to Amanda about my art, I can, you know, let it flow freely. Then record it. You know, just get it out in whatever way, like has no pressure, no resistance, and then you can take from that and build it. Maybe just saying it out loud is a step that you do before writing it down. Sure, that's kind of the point you're making too, is practicing talking about your art. We did artist interviews one trip, and it was really successful, and I'd love to do that again.
I think there's a different, I love the interviews too. It was really great, but I think there's a difference between having somebody ask you questions that lead you to the point and being able to just extemporaneously be able to talk about your art in, you know, like 2 minutes max. Like, what can you tell somebody about this piece? In the same way we're talking about writing the artist statement, it would be doing that out loud.
Yeah, it's a good call. So 2 minutes, that's a good mark. Let's give some guidelines to think about for our statements as we're drafting them today. I would say no longer than a paragraph, maybe 3 to 4 sentences, 5 sentences, a short read. If there's a point, like, that's going to vary for each person, because maybe you need a few more sentences to really make that point. But you're asking yourself, like, is every phrase necessary, and really breaking that down by the words. And then also the who, what, and how. And that could be specific to your piece, right? That could be, what's the title of this painting? How did I create it? When? Why? Someone asked me earlier, like, well, If what about including any of my history or my background? If your experiences are so closely tied to your art that it's imperative that you mention it, absolutely. If I grew up on a farm around animals that now have become the main subject of my work, I might want to mention that in that artist statement. But if that actually has nothing to do with my new body of work, then that piece of my history isn't necessary in this case. So again, just goes back to evaluating for yourself what's really relevant here. Does it answer those questions? And is it about the art? You know, I've got a really great list of some statements to share, and I think that'll just help us really see some successful examples and then start to get motivated and inspired to do our own. Before we move into that, is there any questions? Lindsay, I see you raised your hand. Make it, Lindsay.
Unmute, Lindsay. You're muted.
Sorry. Okay. I just wanted to add on to what you were saying, Anya, about, you know, if we feel that something's important to include about like our history, that there's the artist bio, you know, and that's something to keep in mind. So when you're writing your artist statement, you know, it seems like a really awesome thing to want to put all the meat and potatoes in there, but you can just save it for your artist bio, which if, you know, not if, but your artist statement is going to make people want to read more about that anyways. So I just wanted to add on to that. Super great bits of info here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And that's, I think when we go into this, just maybe like I wrote out my whole bio, wrote that whole story, and then I took out the important parts that would make a good statement. And I realized that, oh, that's already here. So I don't really need to include this over here because I have this version. But if you haven't written a bio, you're going to be trying to fit it all in the statement, you know? So I think just having that initial exercise of getting a bunch of information about yourself down, you can start to pick through that. Yep, that's a good point, Rosa. Artist statement should be in first person. It should be. I've seen bios done both. Amanda, what's the official, do you know, call on the bio being in first or third person?
It depends on, I don't know what it depends on, to be honest. Like, there's plenty of people that will, you know, have the third person, as it just gives it a little bit more distance, and it's more like you're being written about, you know. It's not like you're telling your own story, but I think that's, I don't know if one's better or not. I don't know.
Yeah, Autumn's is amazing. We'll actually start with hers. Amanda, I'm going to post the link in the chat. Do you want to read it? So it's not just me reading the whole time. Yeah, I agree, Karen. Third person definitely feels pretty professional.
Karen, I can share the screen too.
Perfect.
That might be just to see how she's also laid it out. And so here, this is under about the artist, and she's got a quote here from Alex Gray. Always good. This is also, if you're ever going to do a book or anything, you know, getting testimonies from artists or people that are more well-known than you are, or somebody that you really respect. Autumn Sky's visionary artwork reveals hidden spiritual forces and embodies the noble beauty of transformative inspiration. The clarity of line and form in her work is drawn from the depths of a mystic heart that sees the potential of humanity in a sacred world. Oh, Alex, he's so fantastic. And then, so about the artist. And that's going to be her statement. So, and this is in first person. Each canvas takes me on a journey. And as my paintbrush follows, each time I am led back to my center. I believe that the role of the artist is especially crucial at this challenging and exciting time. While the world is at the precipice of momentous change, artworks have the potential to be maps, and these maps can help guide humanity forward into new and positive ways of seeing and being. Through creativity, we have the opportunity to transmute shadow and pain into visions of healing and wholeness. And so I offer my artwork as a mirror, both an intimate personal reflection and a grand archetypal revelation. Within these visions, may each viewer recognize their own sacred heart and cosmic divinity. And through this recognition, may we remember the innate grace that dwells within. So in many ways, this is like a prayer. It's like the prayer that is thread through all of her work. So it's like you go and you look at her work and it's like that rings, it's like a flavor, or it's like a tone or something that's like thread through. And then this is in third person, and it's her biography. Should I read this too? Or no? No, we're focusing on the statements.
Yeah, I think we'll put the link though. The link's in the chat. And then we'll also compile a link of all of these and post it in the group in case you're not keeping track of all these links. We got you covered.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also like that about hers. Did feel very much like a prayer. You notice it wasn't too long. It looks longer because it's, up in a short space on the side, but and I like that she has a lot of pictures of herself and her art at the same time. You can get a feel just from her vibe between what you read and what you see here. If you didn't know anything else about her, could you get the feeling of her essence through this? And I personally can.
Yeah, what she's about. What's the source of like all these images? Where is it coming from? I think they're really key words are important here too. It's like what words come up for you. And I think in writing your own statement, what are really key words? You can start super abstract and then weave them together.
Yeah. Can I read yours next?
Sure.
I'm actually excited to talk about yours, Amanda. I really like this. Through my work, I aim to shatter the illusion of separation, to challenge the viewer to question and evolve out of ignorance, conditioning, and ingrained genetic habits. In life, I strive to take responsibility for the effect of my existence, and through my actions and images, inspire others to think, dream beyond their immediate capacity. Ultimately, I seek to create portals that open to the infinite possibilities of being and expressing, so that we may remember and rediscover who we are, where we originate from, and where we are headed. My aspiration is to paint messages, visions, and narratives that communicate with an elder and wiser us, awakening ancient memory, as well as the present us, that we may grow up and accept the responsibilities towards ourselves, each other, and the rest of existence on this planet now. So what I really like about your statement is that your intention is so clear of like why you're creating this art. And that's the most important thing, maybe even beyond, the images themselves, but the messages that are received. And yeah, do you want to tell us about like what you're...
Well, for me, I really was, I'm really, I guess, attempting with this to make it or give more direct like intent or offering, because an image and many of my images, it's like you look at it and there is some narrative, but it's like there's a much bigger prayer and desire behind like the thread of the work of like what really drives me to create. And that was something that it took a while for me to kind of put it together, I guess, because in the beginning you can also be very drawn to, I guess like I had this thread of wanting to contribute to humanity, like in a positive way, ever since I was a young person. But then to connect that with the art, and it took longer, but it helped to kind of write about it for sure. And then also, yeah, I guess that's what it is. It's like it's trying to articulate what the driving force is in me, and to really, it seems it is wordy in some ways, and it kind of bounces around like ancient future. Some of it's a little bit too flowery. Like I want to go edit it, like distill it down even more, you know, but I think that's maturity too. With time, you know, you kind of are like, yeah, I want to do all this. And maybe it is all that, but it could be even, you know, in less words and just go straight to the heart. I mean, ideally that would be it. And then you look at the painting and you're like, oh, I felt that, but I didn't quite know how to say it. And then something like that, you can like, you know, there's a mystery to it. And there's also a real tangible kind of like purpose for it, you know, and that's it. It's like, what's the purpose of your art? That's a big question, you know, and at times in the beginning, you're like, I'm just trying to figure it out. I'm trying to figure out what my, you know, what I'm really interested in. But that's the goal, is to marry your passion of what really, of your values, of what's really, really important and valuable to you with what is with your body of work. Because that's when it's like really authentic and others see it. When there's a real connection there.
Definitely. And I like the part about being the self-responsibility, like there was something really genuine in it that I felt like I connected with you and your mission overall. And then it, you know, it was almost like a calling of my own personal responsibility for you in your statement to have like pointed that out, you know? So
I think that was important to me too, that it wasn't just about like, what am I painting and this idea of it, but that it being my life, and that my life is committed to a purpose where the painting is a tool. And so it's not really all just about the painting. It's about like, what is my purpose on earth, you know, and then how is the art like one of the mediums that you're using to express that and to be of service through it. But it's not all the art, like it is you and like everything you do. Yeah,
it really is. So I know a lot of you want to share, and I'm super stoked for that. I think we're going to save the last 2 hours for the group roundtable to give some people some time to either write theirs or edit them. And then I've got a couple featured examples that we're going to finish off this section with. The other thing is I really want to get to taking pictures of our paintings and how to submit for applications and make sure we cover some of those things while we've got Amanda. That's what I came for, is to find out how to take pictures of my painting. Awesome. Do you want to read mine, Amanda?
yeah.
I'm still working on mine too. That's why I'm here as well. That's, you know, where this is a constantly evolving thing. And after rereading it myself for this trip, I'm like, oh God, you need to rewrite your own. But that's why we're here. And I'm really grateful for this space and everybody's input.
Yeah, I'm going to share the screen too.
There's probably some commas needed.
Oh, I know. I've noticed that in mine too. Certain things that punctuation. All right. Artist Statement by Ania Amador. Although my art and creative expression take form in a variety of different mediums, painting and public speaking have become the primary focus of my work. Whether I'm using words or paint, my intention is to illustrate my perception of the connection between the energy we project through our thoughts and words and feelings and the physical realities we experience. Each painting is a new opportunity to bring this message to life, and through meditation, I invite the universe to guide me in the content and delivery. It is through my personal example and artistic expression that I intend to inspire others to claim the power of their focus and engage in the powerful practice of deliberate creation. That's beautiful. Yeah, I do see that it could be like some words are,
it's a little wordy and no commas. It's
slimmed down a little bit, but what I really like about it is you're going from okay, what is my connection to, what am I doing? How am I doing it? And like, what's happening like when you're doing it? And then what is your prayer for it to go into the world? Like, what's the gift for the world? So it has a really nice arc.
Thank
really
you.
nice arc from going from the deep personal into the external.
Yeah, thank you. It's so powerful to hear someone else read it, because I've read it to myself a bunch of times and it sounded differently than when you read it, you know? So I think that there's really something to that once you guys get some things down on paper, or, you know, to have somebody else read it to you aloud. That was really good. So maybe in our sharing today, instead of, you know, you can choose to share your own or to have yours read.
Also, a good thing to do is to take apart, like write something and then take apart the sentences, like just each sentence, really like take it, make space. And each sentence in of itself should be totally whole. And then to be careful to not repeat words.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Find another word that can be supportive but isn't the same one, unless it's very in the beginning and very at the end. But two sentences next to each other should have diversity.
Yeah, definitely. I have a couple others that I'm pulling up real quick to share. Emily Kell has a really beautiful artist statement, so we'll read hers next. Emily says, "My work celebrates mysticism, ancient cultures, and the divine feminine. It is intended to be meditative and thought-provoking to the viewer. I would like to reflect the interconnectivity of all living things and to imbue the work of a sense of primordial remembrance. My paintings aim to illustrate the ideal of unity beyond any degree of separation and to expose us as one. My work explores the multifaceted beauty, power, and mystery of nature, and in particular, it explores the aspects of womankind. Within this work, I strive to overcome restrictive modern concepts of female beauty and to empower the women featured in the artwork to claim their own beauty and strength. Through my artwork, I explore the spiritual journey of human family as the screen through my eyes. Many of my paintings are very intimate and they express the relationship of humanity to the sacred mysteries, divinity, and source. Through my paint and brush, I channel the persistence of love that makes all life possible." My work pays, I don't know if this is still the artist statement, but my work pays homage to the archetypal and ancient goddess and a return to the knowledge that she represents. Using myself and women in my life as inspiration and as models, I create works that are intended to speak to the entire human family, but also as a personal, intimate element to them. Much of my own personal journey is revealed through my poetry, which is written in secret languages throughout the work. These paintings serve as talismans to initiate the viewer with the greater sources of knowledge and the freedom I perceive within that knowledge, and to visually express these things through conceptual representations of archetypes and through sacred, for some reason, because of Zoom, there we go. Through sacred projections of collective healing. My art aims to articulate a sense of awe and beauty and to ask all the important questions with an understanding of that the answers are infinite. So there's a couple of reasons I wanted to share Emily's. I think it's really, really well written, but I also think there's some things that we could like build on here. And this is a good example of like how maybe yours is a little, like, I think this is long for like for a justice statement, but it's also really vivid. And she incorporates a lot of different elements of her work, like her poetry, and again, with the intention, making that very clear why it is she's creating this work.
Yeah, and there's a place for a longer statement like this.
Yes.
And I think that it's good to have that, like a one-page kind of thing. It'll be useful to have in a variety of situations. It can be very useful to have a longer statement, but a much shorter, just thinking of the attention span of people nowadays too, the shorter, more condensed version, the better for, I think, many purposes. But at the same time, she's a writer, and like if you follow her on Instagram and stuff, like they're long like writings many times, but they're very captivating, and that's part of her.
Yeah. Yeah,
story.
there's definitely, and I didn't mean that as like there being anything wrong with this. I think that's why I picked her as an example. I love her so much, and I think it's really well written. And like you said, there's a place for all of it. What I would ask is if somebody were only going to read the first 3 sentences or 4 sentences, would that have like told them what they needed to know about Emily and her art, and maybe it is. And then that's the way that you approach the situation yourself, is how far down the page until I get to the core of what I want that person to know, and would I be content if they only got to the first 3 or 4 sentences? Well, I've got the screen up. I've got one more.
I think it does. Like the first 3 sentences of her statement could stand alone. Totally.
Yeah, totally.
Even the first sentence, like mysticism, ancient cultures, and the divine feminine. It kind of can definitely sum up her work in many ways.
Yeah, if you already knew she was a painter, I suppose too. I like how there was a point at the end where she said, "With my paint and my brush."
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that was clear. Okay, we're going over to Jack Henry. He says, "Come with me on a visual exploration through the mythos and mystery." Actually, Amanda, will you read this one? You can see it on the screen. It's on the screen.
Yep.
Okay.
I was just making it smaller so I could see it. So, come with me on a visual exploration through the mythos and mystery, cosmology and philosophy of Earth's multitudinous.
That's why I made you read it. No, I'm kidding.
Multitudinous. I'm already skipping here. Cosmology and philosophy of Earth's multitudinous cultures from past, present, and future. On this journey, I hope to inspire within each viewer the opportunity to ask questions of themselves and others regarding who and what we are, both individually and collectively, and where we go from here. The alchemical process of painting affords abundant opportunity for insight. I can only hope that my visions can invoke new perspectives, questions, and opportunities for growth in others as they have for me. That's a pretty that's a nice bite size.
Yeah, and I can tell from reading this that he's a painter, that why he's creating the art, what some of the elements that he probably paints about are.
I take out that multitudinous though.
That's a great point. You if there's words that people are stumbling, when you read it, you want it to flow and you want it to have a vibe, and that's a really good point.
I also personally don't really like words like this on top of the image.
I was going to say that as well. The writing, I think, is hard on the eyes. And although it's cool to see his painting, I'd much rather focus on the words and then see the painting next to it. I completely agree. Yeah. I know, Natasha, are you still with us? That was the last one I was going to read.
Oh, I've chopped mine, so all this work has gotten me just to rethink it, and ultimately I want my artist statement to be as powerful as one of my paintings. So I don't feel it's ready to read yet, and it may be a while. I'm not rushing it. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. The last one, was great, but I totally understand needing to get to a place with it yourself where you feel like you really it represents you. So take your time, and I'd love for you to share when you're ready, whenever that is.
Last time I shared with you in the group, and Romeo was there and he fell asleep, and so it kind of gave me the message that maybe I'm not quite there yet.
I would use that as a signal, but oh
yeah, no, I think you're really powerful with words.
Yeah.
And I know for a fact that everyone in this room is powerful with their art, with their expression in some other way. So I think having that same confidence that we bring to the easel to our artist statement is going to be huge, so
You could mention Romeo's because his is like really about the emotion and his is almost like a poem. It's like less wordy and more in a feeling space.
Awesome. Well, you want to read that one, Amanda? And we'll close artist statements. And then Papani, we'll do a quick Q&A before we move on from artist statements too, if there's anything that anyone wants
Where
to
would
ask.
you find Romeo's statement? I have one. If anybody wants to pull it up, I don't know where to find it.
I do recall him sharing it, but I don't.
Yeah, he's a poet. Is it this? No. I have Carrie Ann's pulled up that I thought would be interesting to share.
Awesome.
So Carrie Ann Bade, her work, if you don't know her work, should check it out. These are some of her more recent pieces. She's a professor at Florida State University. The allegory of bad. What is this? Bad and good government. Okay, so yeah, that's the allegory of bad government. Then there's the allegory of good government somewhere else. Okay, so and we got to she's just so busy lately, but we got to get her on here for a little presentation and conversation. So see, if you go here to her website, she's got a statement, she's got a CV, and she's got a biography. So this is her biography here. Also not too long. Nice photo of her. Right? And then her CV is, goes always from like present backwards. Solo shows, selected group shows. That's what a lot of artists will. Exhibitions curated, honors, awards, fellowships, lectures. Yeah, she's pretty cool. And statement. Carrie Ann Bade, from the autobiographical to the universal. She's got even a title of it. I paint linking the power of historical masterworks with my own experience as a contemporary artist. By using this fragmentary boneyard of painting with reverence, I am a scavenger salvaging lost aesthetics. My art has been an attempt to reconcile the irreconcilable, resulting in an exploitation of fragmentation found in collage. I think of myself as a kind of Dr. Frankenstein attempting to piece together the sublime. But boom, that's a good sentence. These painted parables, comprised of remnants of Renaissance and Baroque paintings, curate surreal landscapes inhabited by exotic figures. As a steward and axeman, I return to the haunting moments in art history in order to reclaim them, not merely as a quotation of a theme or an image, but to recapture the materiality of methods and techniques in which they were created. The material strategies necessary to deploy these paintings bring a contemporary voice to the past while contemplating the ageless issues of morality, politics, and the individual quest for self-expression. And then here she has a quote by a curator. Carrie Ann Bade uses art historical references as an anchor for her intricately layered, exquisitely painted, bold compositions. She draws us in through the comfort of these vaguely familiar visual associations and then confronts us with contemporary issues such as gender equality, sexuality, and the struggle to define oneself. Her complex, luscious works are at once reverent, soulful, unsettling, and sincere. Alex Sloan, curator, Sloan Fine Art, New York. That's captivating. I would definitely say also the combination, right? And Autumn Sky had that as well, right? Having a testimony, having a little quote from a recognizable character or somebody of merit, right?
Yeah, that was really awesome. And I love the quote too. Where do we get this guy to write my quote? Like that was awesome. It was really great.
Yeah. Well, she's also quite a, as a professor, she's you know,
Academia, yeah.
role model in that
Mhm.
sense. I looked up Swoon, and she doesn't have a statement here of written in first person, but there's about. And so this is where this is a kind of a statement, but from a third person. It's about Swoon. Shall I read it? Or it's not really but it's describing kind of her work. It's somebody else writing about her work. So it's
Yeah, drop the link too.
Yeah, okay. And it's not as much of and then she's got her CV here. See, so there's an about where somebody else has written something about her and her work. And then she's got the CV. Yeah. Cool.
I really appreciate everybody being such good listeners. I think it's so important that I didn't want the whole trip to be a lot of reading, but at the same time, how do we learn except from other artists and how they are creating? And so thank you everyone for following along. Having these different versions, one of the main reasons we talked about there being different types of things you're going to apply for. And your statement for your grant might be different for that art project that you want to participate in or that exhibition. And all of these different versions you're going to be able to build on over time. And as Amanda pointed out, you're going to come back to this. Your art may change, your perspective could have changed, and you want to update that. Or maybe it needs to be specific to something like about your painting, for example, if you're submitting for the Transformation 2020, or if you've got a piece for, anything that you're submitting, is going to have a section asking you to tell them about yourself or your art, and you're going to want to do that as concisely as possible. I run a large-scale mural project called the Mural Maze, and I go through a bunch of applications, and I'm always really interested at just the range of the submissions, and you can really tell who wants it and who is just applying or maybe not putting that much thought into it. And as a curator, that stands out to me. How much time did someone put in this application? At the same time, I have a lot of applications, so I can't read several paragraphs. I need artists to tell me as much as they can in the shortest amount of time. So another thing with writing these statements is in addition to covering all the bases and making your point as quickly as possible and making sure that it's relevant to what you're doing, is the relevance part. That's what I want to focus on. In the blog, she pointed out, if you're making a statement about something, but the picture next to it is a small painting. I'm telling you how I paint large scale murals, and then I offer this small watercolor. And there's a lot of people that applied for my project that did exactly that. Maybe they didn't have pictures of murals and things that were relevant to what the project was, and they gave me what they had. But I think that's when we've got to either dive back deep or come up with an example, create something that shows that you have that experience so that you're qualified to do that and really evaluate the material that you're presenting. If that makes sense.
I wanted to also, Shepherd Ferry has a pretty interesting website, and it's got a pretty diverse body of work. But he's got, instead of an artist mission statement, he's got a manifesto, which is something that you could also write for a specific body of work, So I'm going to put that link in here too. Manifesto for his propaganda manifesto. Manufacturing quality dissent since 1989. it's just an interesting way to
tell the story,
Mhm.
right? To tell the story. That's awesome. Does anybody want to chime in with a question or comment about artist statements? Again, we're going to regroup it towards the end of the trip, the last 2 hours, for a good share, and you'll have a chance to read and practice your statement that way. But if you've got a question you'd like us to touch on now, please feel free. All right. How many people are interested in how to take a proper photograph of your painting? Yeah, it's a big thing to try to capture an image that fully represents the original, and it's something that I've struggled with and I'm continuously working on. And I'm really interested in your insight with that, Amanda, today.
Yeah, so I don't have like something written up on my screen specifically. I did send out an email to those of you that were in the Transformation 2020 workshop with suggestions around what to do, and maybe I'll just pull that up. Where did I put it? Aha. There we go. Here we go. Okay, so I'll just share my screen too. Oh, Carrie, Stella, did you send Carrie a little clip of our, cool.
Says
Yeah.
hi. Hopes to be on here soon.
Yeah, she just wrote me. She says, happy to help with educating the train. Oh, cool. Yeah, we'll get her on here soon enough.
Some good stuff.
Yeah. So creating a quality photograph of your work. So I put, this is really focused around the submission for this virtual exhibition. So one of the first things though, like you want the highest quality photograph with the most information that you possibly can have of your work if you intend to sell it, right? And even if you don't intend to sell it, if you have it and you want to share it just for your archives as well. People just have been dealing with big fires recently, right? Like thinking of Michael V and Lisette and anybody like dealing with having to maybe abandon their work. Much easier in some, like have a hard drive, and a virtual, like a hard drive that's on in the cloud. Your photographs of your work are super, super important. So, and having a professional photographer take a photo. There's one thing about that though. Many professional photographers they're not experts in photographing artwork. And that can be, yeah, you can still get a pretty decent photograph, but the ones that are really like focus on that, there are photographers. They might not be in every town, but there will be, there's one in our town. We have a pretty small town, but he does focus also on photographing fine art, and he has a setup it has a lot to do with the lighting, and then also, using it depends on what kind of reproductions you may want to do as well. But the lighting is super, super, super important. The lighting, that it be really balanced and that you get the largest file possible a regular camera is still going to make something that you could blow up to maybe like 24 by 30 inches, in that range, in it at like 300 DPI. 300 DPI is what you want for a like a giclée print, and a giclée print is basically just means like a pigment print. It's a fancy way of saying it. And it's like a airbrush printer almost. It like sprays the it sprays the ink on, and it 300 DPI is what is like where you can't see the pixels to the eye. Like 300 DPI, you can get away with it sometimes at 240 or 200, but it depends on the image and it depends on the surface. If you're printing on canvas, for an example, you can get away with a lower DPI because of the rivets in the canvas. But if you're printing on paper, you are going to see everything, you know? So you can get away with doing, if you're just going to do smaller prints, you don't have to have a massive file. But the bigger the file, the better. So the place that I work with and have worked with for over 10 years is called Static Medium, and they're in Los Angeles. They print all of Audrey Kawasaki's work. They do a lot of like, I mean, they kind of built their company off of like working with her. And Matt rigged a middle format camera. So, you know, like traditional cameras, like a 35 millimeter slide would be like this size, right? That's small. Then there's a middle format that's going to be like this. I don't know the exact dimensions. And then, or like this. And then a bigger one, the biggest are like this. And what you used to do before the digital like revolution in many ways, or that, I mean, there's been like a journey, a transition, but you would get a transparency, which would be a slide that would be at least middle format or large format. That's how all of Ernst Fuchs's work was photographed, for an example. And then you would take that, and then it would be drum scanned into the computer. I was like that for quite a while. And that drum scanning was how you would get that information. And that was a lot of information. You would have a really big file off of like a middle format transparency. And it's not a negative, it's like it's a positive, but that would be how you would record it and then make reproductions. So this guy, Matt from Static Medium, he rigged a middle format camera directly to the computer. So it's a photograph. He'll set up the photograph in a dark room with lights. He has a whole setup for photographing artwork. And he has the camera has like the, you know, like the accordion kind of thing on it. It's like an older camera. And then he sets it up, and it basically, it's like a scanner, and it scans the image. Then you do a little bit of photo of correction with the original image right there. That's a super important, that you sit down with the photographer, and even if it's just a photograph, you want to sit down with it on the screen and the original piece, ideally together with the photographer, and you both zoom in on all the colors and make sure the balances and everything are right. And then that's your master raw file. And that master raw file you want to save as a TIFF, T-I-F. That has more information than a JPEG. And you want to have a file, a folder that has all your raw files in it. And then from there, you take that, very useful to have Photoshop and to know your basics in Photoshop, and to then you resize that image for different uses. So you're going to do a print edition that's, you know, 11 by 14, so 300 DPI, and you resize that. Then you have, you know, one that's for web, for the internet, You have one has, you have different sizes of your image. And, but you can also, so I wrote here too, you can take your own photos. I don't have a setup for taking my own professional photos because I've chosen to put it in somebody else's hand and pay them for it. I found like to get and so my files that I usually get a photograph from Static Medium will be over 200 megabytes. And that size, like usually 250 megabytes, something like that. And that size, I can print like a 36 by 48 inch print at 300 DPI, or almost 300 DPI. And anything larger than that, say you're going to do a billboards in general, like they're not, when you're real close up, you see a lot of pixels, right? But you want, for a fine art reproduction, you need to have it needs to be at minimum 300 DPI. And don't kid yourself that you can go into Photoshop and say it's much smaller and just make it bigger. That it doesn't really work like that. I mean, there's some programs that can help fill it in if a file is really small, but your iPhone or your phone, it's just not going to cut it to do a really large, or have like a really good record. But it will work sometimes. Like 11 by 14, like the little mushroom painting that I just did, I took to the copy shop and scanned it at 600 DPI, the highest that I could. And it's actually, I think, going to work out just fine to do reproductions that are small. So if you have a small piece, you can just take it and scan it. The highest quality you can do for archiving your work is to have it scanned in there's really, really high-end scanners. And there was this company I worked with in Vienna when I was like kind of early in my career, and it would cost like 120 euros or more, 150 euros to get one of these scans done. But then I would have a file that would be over 300 or more megabytes. Like and that's like museum quality. But that's like, do you need that big of an investment? I've realized that, it was fine for me to be getting my paintings photographed with Static Medium. I liked the quality. I saw a lot of other artists that were doing the same thing. And that cost me $50. And so that was a big difference. But I've found that my deadline for finishing a painting is always to get it to the photographer. So before you ever send work away to a show, you need to have a photograph that is something that you're going to be fine with living with that if you never see the painting again. So, and the lighting is the most important. So if you're going to photograph your own work, lighting, make sure there's no glare. So how do you get it so there's no glare? You need to find, like, I go around everywhere, like looking for the most neutral place to find that I'm not going to find a glare. And some pieces are really hard if they're dark, if there's a lot of dark colors in it. But you got to, create like a filtered environment, very like, a gray, cloudy day is good, not direct light. But you got to play around with that and make sure and be really sensitive to that. If there is a glare, do everything that you possibly can, like build things. Like I get in all kinds of constructs around that. Yeah, I mean, I know that there's people like Olga Klimova. I know that she photographs a lot of her own work. I remember Adam Scott Miller telling me that what he would do is he would scan his work in piece by piece on a scanner. And most of his work was not very big, and it was like it was paper glued onto wood and then acrylic. Like, he has super mixed technique, Adam Scott Miller. And so he would scan in piece by piece by piece of his painting, take it into Photoshop, and then knit it together, and then have a really big file that he would do on his own. So that's a way as well, right? But that's a route that I never took. But you could get, like, you know, if you have a pretty good camera, they can also photograph raw files. That's good. And then you have a setup where your lighting is as balanced as possible. And then in Photoshop, you can go in and adjust tones and colors and your lighting. You want to be careful. Some photographers will correct your image and will blow it out because they're used to that from their training of in just photography. In artwork, the goal is to make it look as exact as possible as the painting. And so you have that raw file, then you could go and manipulate it. For a print series, for an example, say you want to pop it a little bit more, that's up to you. You can go and mess your image as much as you want and turn it into all kinds of different things. That's up to you. You know, like, how many times are you going to have the original right next to a print? It's probably rarely or almost never going to happen. So, I mean, you have like leeway to what you do with that print, but I think it's really important that your photograph for your archives is going to be as similar to your painting as possible, right? And okay, another major point, which I've seen plenty of people do this, is that they don't take a photograph at really the right angles. You can't tilt. You don't want to tilt. It's got to be straight. It's got to be straight as much as possible. I mean, you can warp it in Photoshop and stuff, but that's going to degrade the value or the quality of the photo. So you want to make that really straight. So I think, like, for this exhibition that's coming up, the Transformation 2020 exhibition, that if you don't have access to someone else to photograph it better than you can, you know, then you try and do it yourself. And if you have a pretty good camera on your phone, you can get away with it. You can, but make sure that your lighting's as perfect as possible, because we're not looking for huge files, right? Don't take a photo on your phone and then make a print out of it. That, unless it's just really small, like you could do stickers from a photo from your phone, but I wouldn't do a fine art print from a photo from your phone and wouldn't use that as your records. Think about how much time you spend on a piece. Like, it's really, really important that you honor that by having it really well photographed. Is that?
Yeah, that's good. I have a couple things to add. Like, for if you're going to be taking the picture yourself, a tripod helps a lot. Just something, yeah. Even if you don't have a tripod, resting it up on a table somewhere that you're not holding it around and moving it is key. I have a little Canon straight shot or something that it's not great, but it's a digital camera that's better than my phone. And I've been able to get some decent prints if I've had to take the photo myself. A pro tip that Mark Henson actually offered: if you're hiring a photographer to paint or to take your pictures for you, you want to be really organized in advance, because they do charge by the hour. So you're going to go in there being like, I'm photographing these 3 paintings, we're doing this, and come in with a plan, you know, so you can maximize that session with that photographer. And also consider, like Amanda said, being able to on the spot edit those photos. You're going to want to work that into your budget and your time so that you can do all the things in the time that you have. And then as far as scanning photos, I know Office Depot, for example, up to 24 by 36 unstretched canvas, they can actually put through, and I've done it before and got really amazing quality photos. Obviously, if you have really textured paintings, or if there's any risk to it being scratched or something, that might not be the route, but it is good to just look what's in your community. A lot of times there's other artists that already have this set up, or, you know, there's resources available. Just gotta look.
Yeah, I saw some questions about DPI. Like and a printer isn't going to print higher generally than like 300 DPI is for printing. But if you have like, if you do a scan and you can scan 600 DPI, it's better because you have more information. But you're still going to change that to 300 DPI for printing. But you could then blow it up, like double the size and still have 300 DPI, you know? But for like the online, we're looking at pixels. So we're asking for 5,000 pixels in one direction, which is, in the DPI, you know, it's going to change. If you change the DPI, it'll change the pixels as well. So if you just stick with the pixels as the measurement. But the DPI, I would say like for online, 150 is going to be high end, but 72 is like your basic. But I'm also like not a total expert in this on the pixels and the graphic side. But I know that like most VJs or people that are going to be projecting your work, they usually want, usually ask for minimum of 2,000 pixels. But that's like somebody like Jonathan Singer, though, who does really, really high-end projection work. He'll use like the highest quality image that you have because of the kinds of systems that he runs it through. But I would, for the exhibition, I would focus on pixels rather than a specific size, because that'll give you, because everybody, it's just like for the longest edge, because otherwise you got to do size and DPI. Somehow pixels is kind of like a condenses it, I guess. I like the comment that Joe put in about taking off the edges of a scanner, of an A3 scanner. And then, because that makes it so you can take a work that's larger and you can scan sections.
I've done a section scanning with a wand. That's a tool you can just buy on the internet that's like a scanning tool, and then to try to take the sections. And for me, it was just a lot more work and time. I imagine someone that's used to doing it could have like knocked it out and it would have made perfect sense. It just wasn't the solution for me because of the learning curve, I think. It's a lot.
Yeah, I prefer to, I'm usually so tired and like by the time I'm like done, like needing to get the piece photographed, because I just push it to the last minute. And so I really like going to my photographer or going somewhere and being like, okay, help me.
Got some things coming in the chat. If anybody else has any specific questions or any tips, definitely please share. I think like for all tasks as an artist, when I find myself that like if it's too time consuming, obviously there's not always the budget and I've had to just figure a lot of things out on my own. But when it comes to something like a photograph that could potentially make thousands of dollars in prints, I want that to be right. You know, that's a priority to get that solid picture. So sometimes seeking professional assistance is the route. Yeah. I wanted to touch a little bit more on, there's other questions about picture taking, just applications in general. I find that like, even when it came time to submit for the mushroom exhibition, that I was in such a rush to get that link filled out. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, this is what they're asking for. They just want my photo. And I didn't realize that the image was supposed to be labeled a certain way, you know? So reading applications thoroughly and knowing what the requirements are on these submissions is huge. Amanda, you're gonna say something about that?
No, that's so good.
Okay.
Glad you're bringing it up.
Yeah, a lot of times, like in this case, it's artist name underscore title underscore price. That's making it easy for the curator to locate your piece, to do everything on their end. A lot of our exhibitions will reject your submission if it's not done properly. So with every application you're filling out, you want to make sure that those images are labeled as according to their prospectus. They're getting in sometimes thousands of applicants or pictures, and somebody's got to sort through all that information. So following their guidelines is huge, especially in this case. You know, if you've got that one shot, then you want to make sure that you've checked all those boxes. And another thing, yeah, is deadlines. I tend to wait to the last minute on things, and that's really nipped me in the butt. And I've also seen where I'll see a deadline's coming up, and instead of putting it in my calendar right away, I just like, oh yeah, I've got to get to that. And next thing you know, the submission application deadline is passed. And I've missed opportunities because I haven't been as organized as I need to be with these applications. So I wanted to encourage you guys to step up with me. Let's really read that prospectus thoroughly about what these galleries or you know, grants or whatever it is that you're applying for, what they're asking for and how to do it right. So yeah, planners are huge, and there's really no excuse. I mean, I have a calendar on my phone, right? I could just stick that deadline in there and then I'd receive an alarm a few days before. But we have the opportunity to submit before the deadline, and that's really helpful too. If you've got your ducks in a row, then like step up and lead the way for the rest of us.
It's also really good. I definitely like to make, I like to make mock deadlines for myself, because it's always nice. Like we've extended at least this, we did it with the mushroom exhibition and with this one, we've pushed it back like a few times, or maybe a couple times, but it's definitely every time I get a little bit more time on a piece, I'm excited. There's something about that like pressure of the last days, hours, that kind of like, you know, step above and past the resistance and push through to another realm of like, it's in those last days and hours for me that I actually go further with my work than I've ever gone before. It's kind of weird how that happens. At least that's in my experience, but it has to do with that compression of time and that deadline. But I often wish I still had more time. So somehow like tricking yourself and planning accordingly to have that little extra time. Sometimes it doesn't always go right. You know, you like, I think I shared that during our workshop when I was like down to the wire and like painted over the whole sky again. And it was like, it was terrifying, and I was totally destroyed internally because I thought I was like, you know, I had a vision and an idea, but then it didn't work out very well. And then I had very little time to correct it. So, you know.
I have a question. This is really for Amanda. Like, I've been working on my self-portrait for the Transformation show, and when I went to have, you know, my photographer do pictures, I had him take a picture of it where it was at. And I haven't done that much work on it since then, but part of me, I'm afraid that if I work on it and I change it, then I have to get to the photographer and have another picture taken, or only sell prints of it. And I was just wondering, like, what do you do? Because like I'm partly afraid to work on it now, but I don't feel like it's done.
Well, I have 5 versions of some high quality photographs of some paintings, because they do, I end up working on them again. I think that it's really, you know, if you can't help yourself and you have to keep working on it, you do that. But it's like, yeah, I mean,
It was funny because I wanted to just get a picture of it so that I could let go of that fear. So I had it at that pace, you know, for myself. But my photographer was like, oh, I really like this piece. So I thought, oh, if it looks done to him, maybe it is done. But also I see all the things I want to add to it and change about it, and
So a way to get around that, or what I've done in the past, if I decide a piece is finished, I've exhibited it, it's a piece. It's also like I put it out there and then somebody wants to buy it, but it doesn't exist anymore in that way because it's a different version. I mean, you're kind of lying, So you can always make a print of it in that version, right? But what I'll do is I'll do it the other way around. I'll keep the original. If that's what I'm going to say, okay, it's photographed, I'm putting it in a show, that's the piece. Then I'll take, if I want to keep working on it, I'll make a
do the canvas clay
in the same size as the painting. I won't have it varnished. I'll do like maybe a little bit of a satin or matte spray varnish just to fix the pigment. And then I'll keep painting on that. And
Right.
I've done that to quite a few paintings. Because you can always keep painting on it, but then you keep the original in that form.
Right.
That's the thing that then gets shared. I mean, that happens a lot with work in progress. You post stuff and then people fall in love with it, and then you keep working on it and they're like, I liked it better before, on it in that version.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, for this exhibit, Eduardo, it's only for the transformation workshop, but we're going to be doing more workshops with the vision train. I mean, exhibitions. I'm sure. Yeah.
I've got a question for you guys. How many people here have either the piece that you're going to list, the transformation, or your mushroom piece, or just any work for sale somewhere online that if somebody were interested, you could send them to a direct link that's not in social media? I just want to see a show of hands. So whether that be a website, like you've got your piece listed somewhere. Okay. How about if it's on social media, a place that you could link right back to that, if not a website? Okay. I want to encourage you guys to reevaluate that online presence. An exhibition is a really great time to get motivated to do that, because somebody sees your piece in the gallery, they read your artist statement, they're so intrigued, and now they want more. And they might not have Facebook. And if that's the only place you have to send them, it's a little bit limiting. So looking into these do-it-yourself website options, or even just like revamping your Instagram, or creating a new page that's just your art, something that can help continue that story outside of the gallery space, is going to help you sell your work if that's your intention, or help people get to know you better. It's like imperative, I think, to have a stronger online presence as an artist, especially if you're wanting to sell your work, because that glimpse from the gallery might not be enough for some people. They want to see more. Important food for thought. We've done a lot of trips on websites, and it's just an ongoing conversation with artists, because it's that task of like, you just want to paint, and creating this online presence takes a little bit of effort, but there's so much value. Just like the statement, once you've got it, and you can update that, and it might be forever evolving, but just taking those steps to get that presence and having a place where you can link to somebody. We've got a question from Muktha. How many people have Instagram accounts on Instagram? Definitely helpful. One more point. The reason why I think it's like you want to have somewhere to link to back to somebody is to save the opportunity cost of making that sale, right? If you're doing everything through a direct message, maybe you have multiple inquiries, and it's taking a great deal of time to have to go back and talk to every single one of those people that are interested and give them that information over and over again. Whereas you could just send them to a link that has everything that they need to know, and then you can maintain those multiple conversations and then follow up for those sales, because you haven't had to spend so much time bringing them up to speed. And there might not also be the time or place for that conversation with someone, and they might not want to have that with you directly either. Amanda mentioned this the other day, that sometimes people don't want to speak directly with the artist. So they might not reach out to you on Instagram. That could be intimidating for some reason. So instead, they want to go to your website, see what you have available, see more about your portfolio, and then make that purchase decision. So yeah, just something to think about is how easy is it for people to find my available work. Maybe it's just this one piece that you're selling and you're like, I don't have an elaborate website, but I need to put this somewhere that I can link back to it.
Yeah, and you also don't need to, like a website is can be really daunting, but you could start with just one page, right? And like a few images and a little artist statement, and just start with baby steps and keep building it. It doesn't have to be, you'll often put it off because it's such a huge task to organize everything.
I love that you said that about the splash page. I love Weebly, Wix. These are all super affordable, do-it-yourself, drag and drop platforms where you don't have to know anything about computer coding to create a really professional looking page. And even if it's just for your one painting this time, that you just say, you know what, I'm going to do it. It doesn't have to be crazy professional, but let me just get this one page up, put my painting, my artist statement, and how much it is. And I want to see, if I can use that throughout this exhibition process to send people to my painting.
I would say Etsy has its own community. And I've never done a lot on Etsy. I think I have an Etsy, but I don't really do anything with it.
My advice,
yeah,
go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm done.
Just the thing about Etsy is that it is a great platform with a bunch of different users, and it is its whole own separate community. But when you're trying to send someone who might not use Etsy to that platform to view your work, it could be a hindrance. Oh, I'm not on Etsy, I'm not going to go there. Whereas if it's go check out my website, there is no, and I know, Samantha, you mentioned that Etsy doesn't require that you have an account to check out, but a lot of people don't know that. So I think having an Etsy in addition to a website or an independent presence is great. But if you're banking solely on Etsy to be your home base, I think you're missing out on a larger audience. And then also, whatever you start as your home base, you want to be able to build off that space, as opposed to starting with Etsy, putting all this time and effort into creating these listings and then realizing you actually still need a website. So I would put that energy into getting my website first and then build out an Etsy presence.
But you could start with in terms of like a shop being on Etsy. I mean, yeah, I've never tried to sell my originals with prices on my website. It's just not been my strategy. I've had prints and things like that. And if people are interested in originals, I ask them to write me, and I have a PDF of available originals that I'll send to people. I've also had, you can also make a password protected page on your site, but that's been my way. I'm also not really as I don't know. I don't try to sell originals super offensively, because they end up selling when they're supposed to. And selling prints and, it all kind of works out, but it's just not been my style. But I think everybody has a different way. There's no one right way.
I think it depends too on how much work you have, and how attached you are to those paintings. I personally have a huge collection that I'm often trying to just get viewed, so I might not be posting with the intention of always selling that. Of course, that's an added benefit, but just wanting it to get exposure. And so there is a harder push from my perspective on some of my work for that reason, and to move it, but I also have my favorite pieces. Like you said, when they go, it'll be the right time.
Yeah, and work that is really valuable, that has a lot of sentimental value to you, you just might not be interested in you know, selling it to just anybody. And you can also, I've made definitely way more off of the print sales of some of my paintings than I ever did off of the original. Yeah.
Go ahead, Lindsay.
I really agree with Amanda a lot about, like, you know, selling the original. It's like it'll sell when it needs to. And as far as prints go, I feel like in these times, like if we're going through, like, you know, that there's always like the feast or famine. And if we're like, there's all these like websites like Art of Wear and Shopify and I think Society 6, and everyone on here has such amazing art, and they have these really cool like programs within their sites where you can upload your artwork and you can kind of manipulate it and you can make merchandise from it. And also they have they drop ship everything and you make like a commission. And while I know it doesn't seem like a lot, it's really like while you're doing the physical work selling prints like in, you know, real life, in the virtual world, while you have this, you know, account, you're able to just kind of sit there and like you'll get this email and people will start buying, you know, prints, or you can make pillows and there's crop tops and there's so many different options. And I know I could put some of the websites. I'm sure some of you know like stuff that I don't even know about. So I'd be interested to hear of some other sites that do the same thing. I've had a lot of it, like great success with Art of Wear, like with my leggings, and like people can order pillows and like prints, and they do all the drop shipping and all the everything, and they pay you every week through PayPal, and I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of really good drop shipping options. What I would say about that is always order samples. If I'm ever going to work with a new company, I want to see exactly what my art looks like. I've also been taking a real interest into who I'm working with and what some of their principles are. At first, I was like, oh, I just want to get my art out there, and was, you know, working with some companies that I found out later didn't have a sustainable practices, or, you know, so just take your time, because there is so many out there, and they usually have it where at a discounted rate, you can order a sample and confirm, okay, this looks good. This is how I want my art represented. Many of them have it to where you can send them material that they'll send out with your orders. So I use a company and I'll send them my business cards and they'll include that in. You can have your branding to keep, you know, keep things streamlined. And then also be careful who you send your high resolution files to. If you don't know about that company and you upload your photo, that it could end up on tapestries in another country that you had no idea about. And that has happened to people I know because they didn't protect their images and they didn't know about the people they were sharing those files with. So do your research, guys. You can't just send these photos to anyone.
Thanks for that insight. And also, again, I would love to hear anyone else's suggestions on like sites that do very similar to like the Shopify and Art of Wear. Because I like Anya said, there's so many people out there, and some may be doing it better than others. So always open for suggestions.
I think the difference though, like Shopify is like a software basically, or that you have to create your product. Like Shopify doesn't make product for you, or the Art of Wear, or like different, like Zazzle, right? Like different companies like that will make. I don't know if it was Lori that was telling me about Zazzle. I remember Zazzle's been around for a long time, but they're kind of like, you know, they'll do drop ship, I'm pretty sure, as well, or you can order like on demand. Like the different companies, if you can get a company that will, you know, an order comes in through your shop and you send it to them and they'll make it and ship it, you know, but you get a pretty small percentage.
It is very small. If you with art, I have my experience with Art of Wear. They're pretty awesome. They do wholesale and everything, and it is a small percentage, but for how much work they're doing and what you're not doing is pretty awesome. And then you do have to have, I think, when you're making like the leggings and all the stuff in like for their, you know, apparel, you do kind of have to have some Photoshop knowledge, because some of your art may need to be like mirrored in certain ways so that when you upload it, it's the right pixels and it's like the right dimensions. So there is some knowledge, but I feel like I've been able to get that's like the best design software as far as I've been able to find. That's why I'm like, if there's anything else out there, I'm open to hearing like something better, because I know that with art of wear, it can be really long wait times and it is really expensive. It is. So.
Does Third Eye Tapestries, do they take like on like orders?
Yeah, it wasn't drop shipping for either of those. The good thing about Vision Lab is they use recycled materials. They're a well-known company already, so they're a little more expensive than other printers I've used, but there's a lot of benefits that come with the branding. And then I've done wholesale orders with Third Eye Tapestries as well, but I don't remember what the minimum is.
Yeah, we Shabnam is my friend and partner in the collection, and she's offered to do tapestries for others at times. We're about to do another run, and maybe I'll ask her actually if she'd be into, if anybody would like to do that. But everybody has a different setup. The way we do it, we make like an extra like thing to be able to hang it a little bit more elegantly, like Third Eye Tapestries. And I think Vision Lab, you just have to like tack it on the wall basically, right?
Yeah, I don't know if they've changed it because there was a lot of requests. We also asked for there to be like tassels on the end for pinning, or like, there's usually like a little loop so that people can stretch them tight.
Yeah.
I've ordered from this link as well. I'll post a couple links.
Yeah, there's always just like especially for making merchandise, like either, you do like bulk kind of stuff and you invest quite a bit of money and then you don't know if you're actually going to sell it, right? So merchandise can be also you can lose money on it because then you can end up or sitting on stuff for a really long time. And so sometimes choosing something where it's just drop ship and you get a small percentage can be a better route for a lot of artists and people.
Yeah, and I just charge accordingly with my drop shipping. I actually there's pretty good margins on some of those companies.
Yeah.
I also try to, like I was saying about the sustainability part, just making sure you're partnering with companies that represent you. That is a thing, to know about where they're located and how these things are made, because it's a reflection of you and your art. So I think that's. I've got a couple links here to share as well of companies that.
Yeah, let's start a thread on Facebook. I'm sure
Yeah.
that would be helpful to a lot of people, different companies, and any testimonies. If anybody has testimonies about who they like to work with.
Right. I didn't want to add to the pack, just the crap. At first I was like, I want to put my art on everything. And then I was like, well, is that really good for the planet? I'm personally am trying to pick like useful items and just be more mindful, because there's a lot of stuff, tangible items already out there. And I'm always thinking about how can I spread my art? I want people to look at it on their shower curtain every day, to have these different items that they might want. But just also consolidating. I think a lot of artists go overboard, and it's almost like Cheesecake Factory when your menu's too big, when there's too many options and you're just overwhelmed by it. So, Lori, I see you cracking up over there. That menu gets me every time. Yeah. Any other questions about what we've talked about today, or any other comments? The chat's really good. Make sure you guys catch up on this talk about Etsy and Patreon.
Ania.
Yeah.
I just want to share something that came into my mind, and I did graphic design like for 12 years, and one of the biggest lessons this experience gave me is that we have to trust ourselves and to trust our work as well, because we can have the best statement and amazing work even, but if we don't know how to sell it, if we don't have the right energy and the right words, that could destroy the whole impulse of the client, you know. So I think we have to trust ourselves and to know the worth of our creation in order to reflect it. And yes, I just wanted to add that.
Choo choo to that.
Yeah.
100%. If you guys don't believe in yourselves, it's that much harder to get art or other people to believe in your work. You know, we always talk about like doing the work starts within, and we say that because it's true. You know, we have to go back in and find that value and appreciation in what we're creating and affirm that to ourselves when we look at these paintings, and we step up to make ourselves vulnerable, to share that with someone else. It's got to come with that energy, that we are solid in our foundation and our beliefs and our intention.
If we don't believe in ourselves, nobody will.
So true. I also wanted to say to Mark said he would love to make more profitable merchandise. And I hear you on that. I'd like that too. I've seen so much of my merchandise has been, we've just done so many things. We're able to keep doing things, but it's not like a huge profit. And what I've learned though from others, what I've been given advice on is like, pick one item that is, and research, like, what's the price point of your clientele? Who's your clientele? And focus on one item. Like, and that's, we could never do it. We went for the full spectrum experimental, you know, and I don't feel bad about that, but it's like coming down, in terms of business sense, you know, if you actually are wanting to make money, it's a business. And so, you know, what is that one item that's going to be your, you know, your bread and butter? And one item or two items. But you get into things where you have a bunch of different sizes, like pants or shirts, or you got all body types, you got, you know, you got to define your market. Where's your market? You know, and it's not enough to just put something out there and be like, yay, you know, there's so much that goes into the back end of it. And I think it was Samantha asked about Patreon, and then even Etsy, you know, all these, you can't just make any of these things and expect that people are going to come there. There's so much more that goes into driving that traffic to these places. And so you have to build that up. And I wanted to give a shout out to this film that came out yesterday, called The Social Dilemma. It's on Netflix. And a good friend, or I would say somebody that I really respect, wouldn't call him a real close friend, but Tristan Harris is one of the lead kind of characters in this film. And they're talking about social media and what's happened. It's a pretty, yeah, trippy, scary. But see, like most of us are using social media primarily as a business, you know, getting the word out there. It's extremely valuable to us. I was like, I don't know, what would I do without social media right now? It would be rough, especially in times like we're in right now, you know, but knowing kind of like, it's a crazy addiction.
Always a good reminder about the balance, like to put it in that perspective that they probably do, to bring you back to what your intention with social media is and your awareness to how it's affecting your life. It's huge. Because like you said, like that's where I run my business. I can't check out of social media, but I have had a really intense awakening about how much time I've spent there and what the distractions are and that's actually costing me. That's time I could be painting. That's time the opportunity cost of wasting that was too great.
I find it interesting too that just came up, like when yesterday or day before, when the Vision Train Instagram hit 10,000 followers, which is pretty cool. I mean, this is something like I really see social media and see what we're doing as a platform to really build awareness and to build, yeah, it's building business, but in very many ways it's building also inspiration. I mean, we're putting things out there that are hopefully feeding people and not just like draining them, right? And so how can we use social media and use these platforms for good? You know, and I think that's the overriding goal of say, the message of Mushroom Magic and the message of, I would say, all the artists that are here, right? And we need an army of people spreading good, spreading the gold and encouraging people. And actually, like, so what can we do to actually balance that? Because how many times do you get on there and you're going to post something, but then you get distracted in the scrolling, you know, which is educational. Well, you know, we can make up all kinds of excuses as well, but how much of it is actually really stealing our time and our life? Double-edged sword, Molly. Yes.
Yeah. It's come up a lot lately, actually, this exact subject Veronica was talking about. She takes time off Facebook and she's in this moment struggling with wanting to make sales there. And knowing about what your options are, you can join Facebook as a fan page and you don't have to have a personal presence where your news feed is filled with all these distracting personal things. It could be interacting as your page. And you can also join Facebook groups now, which is where I sell the majority of my art, as a fan page. You don't even have to go in, you know,
So this is something I wanted to, I would love to play that film on the train sometime soon, because it would be of value for us to know about, and then talk about, like, what are we going to do? How can we continue to really use this force for good?
definitely.
On Facebook, you do need to have a personal account to have a fan page.
You do, but you don't have to engage is the personal, you know.